I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, Ralph Tyko. And this is a very special show. It is opening day 2017 for baseball. It's April 2nd, and we've reached the end of the day. And for my guests, I can assure you they will agree that this is the high holy day of their year. They may have other high holy days as well, but this is right up there with the high holy days that they experience. It's opening day, and start out with one of my guests is Alan Blumkin, who's a baseball historian and a regular co-host on many of the shows on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Hal Bock is with us. Hal Bock is an esteemed author, as is David Nemec. Both of those two gentlemen are among the most prolific sports authors in history. Combined, we've got Mr. Golenbach's not here tonight. If we had all three in the same booth, it would be, as Joe Starkey, the esteemed announcer of Cal, would say, it would be a bonanza. That might be a bit of an inside joke and a regional joke, so you guys will bear with me. Welcome, gentlemen, to opening day in the zone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Best day of the year.
Okay, you concur with me. I'll start with Alan Blumkin. Alan, tell us about an opening day experience from when you were a kid or an adult that you remember that sticks out in your mind.
Well, I was at a couple of memorable opening days. There was a couple in Pittsburgh when I was going to Pitt at Forbes Field way back in the early 60s. But the two I most remember are the opening day in Shea Stadium in 1975. And it was, Joe Torre was managing it. It was so cold in Shea Stadium. And number of people, my office went. I was working for IBM at that point. Our office went, and nobody was really prepared for how cold it was going to be. And Torre was managed, Joe Frazier at the time, excuse me. Torre ended the game by hitting into a double play. He was with the Mets then in the ninth inning. And everybody applauded because the game wouldn't go extra innings. The Mets lost the game 2-1.
How when you say everybody, how many were there by then?
Oh, God knows. I don't remember. It's been a while. And the other one, the next year, April 1976 was the reopening of Yankee Stadium after they had closed it down for the remodeling in 1974 and 1975. I went with a number of people. We were sitting in the upper deck, and the seats were so narrow, and the steps were so small that my first comment about the place was whoever designed the upper deck must have been on acid. I mean, it was scary. It was very, very scary from up there, and the Yankees won the game. They beat Minnesota 11-4, and that was memorable because I was also at the closing day of the first edition in 1973. So those are the two openings I remember most.
Before we go to David Nemec, let me throw you guys a little trivia question, which is something that David is the grandfather of, baseball trivia. You mentioned old Yankee Stadium, and when it closed in 73, who was the pitcher, with qualifying numbers, of course, who had the lowest ERA in the history of Yankee Stadium?
Fritz Peterson.
Probably Rocky Colavito. How's that?
Well, I would have to say that the first answer, would you like to put that in question form, Hal Bock?
Was it Fritz Peterson?
It was was indeed Fritz Peterson. That was very...
Are there a certain number of innings you had to have to qualify? Or?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Qualified the question by saying with qualifying numbers.
Okay, qualifying.
Okay. You have lovely parting gifts, though, David Nemec.
Yeah.
That's the last trivia.
Rocky had an arm, and I always thought he could have.
Rocky had an arm.
He could have become a pitcher. I thought when he's no longer able to put it in the seats. He was hitting warning track power, and I thought the last couple of years that they should have thought about converting him into a pitcher and left him there and seen what would have happened.
Yeah, well, in his day, he had more than warning track power. Right?
Yeah, he did.
He was awesome.
4 homer games.
And your Cleveland Indians probably will never fully get over trading Rocky Colavito. That was Frank Lane, if I'm not mistaken.
Frank Lane at the end of the '59 season, and but I saw Rocky perform many times in Cleveland, and not always to Cleveland's satisfaction. That he. The very memorable throw he made against the White Sox in a Sunday doubleheader near the end of the '59 season. And the White Sox had runners on second and third and 1 out. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Jim McEnany. Hit a fly ball to fairly deep right field. And I think Jim Landis was on third and Al Smith was on second. And Colavito decided he was going to try and throw Landis out. So he gunned a nice rainbow into home plate. And not only did Landis score, but Al Smith scored from second right behind him. And that gave the White Sox a fairly comfortable lead. They ended up sweeping a 4-game series, and that pretty much buried the Indians' chances in '59.
Cleveland had another outfielder who turned into a pretty good pitcher, a guy named Bob Lemon, who was in
Bob Lemon, opening day center fielder, 1946.
That's right.
Yeah, he was a center fielder when Fowler pitched a second no-hitter.
Yeah. But if we want to continue on the opening day, I'd be glad to chip in a couple of my own.
You're next in line.
Thank you.
Please do.
I haven't been to that many, probably 4 or 5, but the two that really stick out was 1965. I was on a conference. I was in graduate school, and we were in Minneapolis. And we went to the Twins opener, and there was snow outside the stadium, and it was cold. It wasn't as cold as the Al's Mets experience, but it was cold enough. And we had fortunately brought jackets, and we were fairly, comfortable. We got pretty good seats. And the Twins had the game wrapped up in the 9th inning, I think with 2 out, when there was a pop fly to third base. They were playing the Yankees on opening day. And Cesar Tovar was playing third base. It may have been his first game as a major leaguer. I don't really recall. But he dropped an easy pop fly. The Yankees ended up tying the game. And the Twins went on to win it in the 11th inning, 5-4. And the Yankees, of course, had won in '64. Nobody knew that the Yankees were about to do a real El Foldo in '65 and '66. So the Twins fans were really, hepped up. Wow, we beat the Yankees on opening day, 5-4, terrific. But who knew that the Twins would end up winning the American League pennant that year, and the Yankees would indeed
go down the tubes.
Go down the tube and finish last.
I remember watching that game on TV.
You watched that game on TV? Yeah, well, that's true. You would have in New York. You would have seen the whole. You would have seen the whole thing. Yeah. My next most memorable game was an 8.
That was a very, very memorable team, the '65 Twins.
They were.
Earl Batty, just top to bottom. Yeah, Allison and Vic Power, and who is one of the most interesting subjects, Vic Power, in baseball history.
Tony Oliva, Killebrew missed a good part of that season, and the MVP was probably the worst player ever to win the Most Valuable Player award, Zoyo Versailles.
Right. Right.
Well, he battled leadoff for the Twins most of the year, and there wasn't really a standout. Who would you have given the award to if you didn't give it to?
Probably Oliva.
But Oliva never really got, just really never drew the attention that he should have. And in the MVP voting, it certainly showed that way. And Killebrew didn't have a particularly great year that year. Jimmy Hall wasn't that great. Bob Allison had a pretty good year, but not that great. And the pitchers they were good.
Mike Grant was the ace of the staff.
But he did. His one-loss record was pretty good, but I don't think his WHIP or the other stats that people go by now were that impressive. So Versailles really.
I might have asked, how did the Twins end up with Earl Batty, as solid as he was? I know he came up with the White Sox.
He did. Don Mitch from the White Sox for Roy Sievers after 1959, when Bill Veeck decided that the White Sox after 1959 needed power hitting, so they traded the two of them to the Twins right before the 1960 season opened. For Roy Sievers, they had traded, I believe it was Tommy John and John Romano to the Indians to get back Minnie Minoso. So he had Minnie Minoso and Roy Sievers in 1960, and it got them third place.
You guys
my friend.
You guys have named a number of players who really belong in the Hall of Fame and aren't there. I'm thinking particularly of Minnie Minoso.
I've been having that for years.
Yeah. I know, and Tony Oliva is another one.
Yeah. These
guys belong in the Hall of Fame, and they're not there, and I don't get why. I don't understand that.
Yeah, it was an awkward time, the late 50s and 60s. The hitting was down. And Minoso came up. He was probably almost. He was in his prime when he came up, but he soon started to, he was old. He was fairly old when he came up at 27, 28, 29, I think.
He's 26.
You can't just go by statistics. You have to take that into consideration, and the pioneering that he did, a black from Cuba. So he was not only playing with pigmentation that set him apart, he was also learning a new language and adjusting to a new culture. And he was a spokesman for his fellow Cubans. He should... as much as Gil Hodges and Tony Oliva, Minnie Minoso should be in the Hall. You're absolutely right.
Anytime anybody puts up a Minoso post that I see on Facebook, I put that down. That he should be in there, and he should have been in years ago. He did play several years for the New York Cuban Stars in the Negro Leagues.
I didn't know that.
To organized baseball.
I'm curious particularly about Oliva, who was a great hitter, and yet he got very little support and just
fell off
the radar.
The hitters that during the what I call the second dead ball era from 1963 through 1968 suffered because of the fact that pitching was so overwhelming during that time period, and also he when he was winning his third batting title in 1971, he came down with a horrific knee injury, which caused him to miss most of 72, and he spent a couple of years as a DH because he couldn't run anymore. And that the Hall of Fame has always been an organization, as far as I can see, that in most cases likes longevity and compilers. You could take 20 years to get 3,000 hits, and you're in because you got 3,000 hits.
Well, one thing that weighed heavily against Minoso and Oliva is they did not even get 2,000 hits. Neither one of them. Oliva because of the injury, and Minoso because of age.
Kirby Puckett is in there.
Kirby Puckett is in there, yeah, and
Puckett was better than Minoso or Oliva.
No, not at all. No, I think that's a tragedy.
If you compare the statistics of Kirby Puckett and Don Mattingly, they're remarkably similar. But Mattingly never got a call, and he's off the ballot, obviously. And Puckett is in.
Had all his early.
Well, Puckett had that World Series, that 90 was it 91
winning the World Series game.
Really,
you're right. That home run.
Yeah, that was a big.
You're right.
Feather.
As every bit as much as
Mazeroski's
home run tilted the scale.
Joe
even
Carter
Allen will
yet.
Do you think that there's any chance Mazeroski would be in without that home run, Alan?
I think my take on Mazeroski is if you put in, he was the best fielding second baseman of his era, maybe for a number of eras. And if you put him because of his defense, why are you putting in the Luis Aparichos and the Ozzie Smiths of the world, who are not exactly offensive forces? You're putting them in the Hall of Fame because of their defense.
Right, for basically the same reason.
Yeah,
but Maz was the best. He had the quickest hands. He was terrific.
We can go on all night about Hall of Fame, who belongs and who doesn't belong. Yeah, so it's a topic that's been beaten to death what times cheap claiming horse.
But that's an interesting question. Would Mazeroski ever have made it if it hadn't been for that World Series home run?
Probably not. But I said we can sit down there and go through every member of the Hall of Fame, make pro and con cases. I did this with a group of people 25 years ago. We threw out everyone that Frisch put in, everyone that Gehringer put threw in, and assorted others. And so I mean, it's an exercise for fun, but I don't think this is really the forum to do that.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, let's talk more opening day. Hal Bock.
I did not cover a lot of opening days, largely because of the crowds. I hated the huge crowds, and the press box would be jammed with hangers-on, and I never liked that scene. But the one opening day that I remember was kind of heart-wrenching for me. We had a guy at the AP named Jim Donaghy. He loved the Mets, and he covered a lot of Mets games. And sadly, he developed brain cancer, and he died in the off-season. And opening day would have been his game, and I went and covered the game, and we had an empty seat in the press box in the memory of Jim Donaghy. And it was not easy to have an empty seat on opening day at Shea Stadium because of, as I said, the jammed press box every year was always jammed. But we had a blank seat, an open seat for the memory of Jim Donaghy. And speaking of the memory of, I was shocked to learn today that Katie Feeney had passed away. Katie Feeney,
yes,
daughter of Chub Feeney, and a long-time Major League Baseball executive and a sweetheart of a woman. She was a terrific help in Major League in the front offices of Major League Baseball, and she apparently died suddenly over the weekend. So that was a sad moment for me as well.
Yeah, this is the
very sad. Her dad was a terrific general manager with the Giants. He just really was. Helped compile. They didn't win very much in the 60s. They didn't win at all, but they were in contention every year. They did win the pennant in '62, and Chub Feeney was responsible, and his daughter was a lifelong Giant. They started in the Giant organization and went on to Major League Baseball as a kind of a guider of the press. Would you say that's a fair estimate of what she did?
She had a lot to do with scheduling as well. How they scheduled the games. Yeah.
Interesting. Rest in peace. Sorry. I'm going to give you a quick opening day story from my life, and Hal Bock will get a kick out of this because he knows my best friend from growing up, Marty Rose. They worked together at the AP. Marty, they knew each other. And more importantly, you knew, Hal Bock, you knew Marty's dad at the AP, Jack Rose, and Murray Rose, who was a writer at the AP.
His uncle, sure.
And terrific writer, too. And it starts out with it says 1964. I'm a senior in high school and not doing very well. It's opening in school. It's opening day at Shea Stadium, and a whole bunch of we kids played hooky from high school to go to opening day. We had like 19 kids seated together in the right field stands opening day against the Pirates. You weren't there, Alan. I
was there
asked you about that.
I was there the next day.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, next day comes, and my mother is. It's during that day. If you remember, Jack Rose, who worked for the AP, worked swing shift, and he was home during the day for the kids. And he runs into my mother shopping. Now, Marty gets permission to skip school, as most kids did, but my parents wouldn't give me permission. I wouldn't even ask because of my grades and what have you. And runs into Jack, does my mother and their acquaintances on the street. They're going shopping, and beautiful sunny day. Kids have a nice day for a baseball game, says Jack to my mother. Oh, really? says my mother. I come home from the game, and I walk into the house. My mother says, how was your day? How was school today? And I said, fine. Anything you want to tell me, she says. I said, no. She went off on me. I don't know if she physically hit me, but wouldn't be surprised. She was not a happy woman, and poor Jack, who was just, he didn't know. He had no idea. That was my memory of opening day, Shea Stadium.
A good one.
1964.
Was that the last time you played hooky?
It was the only time. Believe it or not, as bad as I didn't have to play hooky. I was in a world of my own, daydreaming in class. It wouldn't matter if I were anywhere else. But it wasn't a hooky playing generation. It changed quickly. But, again, this was 1964, and she wouldn't sign the note. I was having a hard time getting back into class. It was anything for baseball. So
I have one more
when you grew up, Hal, as a kid, were you a Yankee? You were a Giant fan, am I correct?
I was a Giants fan because my father taught me to be a Giants fan. He was a Giants fan. He said, that's who you root for. Those are the good guys. The other guys are the bad guys. So I was perfectly happy to embrace the Giants, which made October 3rd, 1951 a very special day for me.
Now, you were old enough to remember it.
Yes.
You grew up in Brooklyn?
No, I grew up in the Bronx, surrounded by Yankee fans.
Where in the Bronx?
Right. And, it's very interesting.
Where in the Bronx?
I grew up in the Tremont section, right outside of Parkchester.
No, I was at the Wallace Avenue and off White Plains Road and Pelham Parkway for my first 8 years.
Sure.
And my grandparents were on Valentine Avenue up on Kingsbridge Road, I think was the station on the D train. Kingsbridge, Bedford. They were on Bedford, Fordham Avenue, and Bedford. Loved the Bronx, the Concourse, Alexander's, nothing like it. Now, you were a Giant fan. You can appreciate this. I haven't had many people to tell this story to. On the Concourse, just comes into my head, around Halloween, the baseball season's over, and I'm a little kid walking with my grandparents on the Concourse. I think it was Alexander's that we went into, if I'm not mistaken, and there were black and orange crepe paper all over the place for Halloween. And as a little kid who had just gone with his grandfather in the 51 season, I was 4.5. They had me for the year. He took me to virtually every game of the year in 51. We just sit in the Polo Grounds, and he'd explain Eddie Stanky, Alvin Dog.
What a wonderful experience.
It was terrific. I can't say. At 4.5, he would tell me things like, Wee Willie Keeler, hit 'em where they ain't. And he'd talk about the Fordham Flash, Frankie Frisch, and the history of the Giants in New York, really, with McGraw and all of that. As a little kid, I'd absorb it. I can remember before Willie was called up in 51, what the Giants looked like. He took me to games at Bobby Thompson in center and Hank Thompson at third, and they reconfigured where they put Bobby Thompson at third for a while, and Monty Irvin was playing left, he was playing first, Whitey Lockman was playing first, he was playing left. I remember everything so vividly from back, yet I can't remember where I left my keys today.
Yeah,
we're all like
that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ralph, I have one small opening day. I went with a bunch of friends of mine to the Vet in Philly in 1971 for the opener there. Jim Bunning beat the Expos 4-1. And it was pretty cold down there also. It was April 10th, 1971, and my father was very upset because I left the Seder early the night before because I had to go down to Philadelphia. I had tickets to go down to Philadelphia. So we got into a fight. We didn't talk for a few months.
Okay.
Actually,
I can remember. Go ahead.
I had one more opening day too that I could bring in if.
Please.
Yeah, when I was living in San Francisco, the Giants had a bad team in '84, and the Padres had won the pennant, nationally pennant. And I went to opening day. We were sitting in the bleachers at Candlestick with a bunch of tennis friends of mine. Probably about 8 or 10 of us went out, and there wasn't much expected of the Giants. And I'd worked on the yearbook, the Giants yearbook that year, and they were supposed to give it out on opening day, but there was a delay. And then after they won on opening day, to everyone's surprise, they beat the Padres, and Vita Blue came in relief and got the win. And the Giants fans were exhilarated, and all my friends were exhilarated, and there was immediate talk like maybe this was going to be the Giants' year. And I said, well, wait a minute, this is only opening day, and the usual cautionary tales. But as it turned out, they didn't give the yearbook out on opening day. They decided to wait till things developed, and they would give it out as and with a big crowd coming, they would give it out for free, and they were picking their time, and they soon fell into last place, and they ended up giving out the yearbooks on a game against the Atlanta Braves. They were fighting for the cellar in the National League West that year, and it was not the Giants' year then, and but the opening day crowd was spectacular. I'd never been to an opening day crowd that was so excited, so thrilled by a win. I think it came in the 9th inning, or maybe even come in an extra inning. But when Blue got the win, the Giants were convinced that he still had something left and he was going to have a big, big year. Didn't turn out that way, unfortunately.
Boy, David, we both lived in San Francisco in the 80s. I lived on 4th and Clement, between Clement and California. And there was a bar in San Francisco. This was the early years of cable TV. I think WGN and the Turner station. And there was a bar called Patio Shays on Geary Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you remember that? That was a great sports bar.
I do remember, yeah. And along with left field duels, yeah.
They started carrying all these games. It became what it is today. We have a panacea of being able to pick, I don't know if that's the right word. We can pick up games now. I've got the MLB TV Connect where they stream live. I've got it on my little cell phone. I can go anywhere with it. I can put the radio on. Any game, 24 hours. They play archive games. When we guys grew up, we were hungry for a game. Growing up in New York, we had it pretty good in one sense. The Giants, Dodgers, and Yankees. Don't get me wrong, but it was a totally different world of telecasting. It was like 2 or 3 cameras. It was naturally black and white. Do you think that that it helps or hinders? And it's a rhetorical question. I think I know the answer to. The TV helps or hinders the growth of baseball, guys?
That's a very good question, and you can really take that in a number of different directions. It certainly helped. It certainly helped bring everyone into the picture, literally, all across the continent. You know, people can pick up major league games, and think of what it was like, in the late 40s, early 50s when you might get the World Series game if you're living in Wyoming, but that was going to be it. And the idea of, I don't think they even had game. I don't know when they started a game of the week, a Saturday game of the week, but it certainly wasn't in the late 40s.
No, the original game of the week was.
So the growth of Major League Baseball, in a sense, it's TV has really been a major boon. But when you think about it, it's also kind of ruined baseball in a way.
Well, the ruined part is playing the World Series in the middle of the night. Kids can't see those games, and you're losing an entire generation of fans.
That's
playing the game so late.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I would rush home from school to catch the last couple of innings, and sometimes we'd even get it on. We'd even have the radio on at least in school.
When I was a kid, and I left junior high school in 1956, and some guy was waiting for his kid with a car, and he had the Lawson perfect game on the radio. So a bunch of us stuck our heads in the car. We wouldn't let the guy go until the game was over.
Oh man, there aren't memories like that for kids anymore because they
And that's a real problem for the game, I think. I mean, you're losing a generation of fans.
I remember
those kids are watching basketball and they're watching football and they're not seeing the major baseball games.
And the price and it's you no longer can. Yeah, when I was a kid, you used
pricing
to go,
families out. My grandfather with no way could afford anything resembling the prices of today. He could barely afford. Nobody could, absolutely. What gets me, you could say, well, that's inflation. That's the way it goes. Well, you know what? It costs 7 times more to buy a banana than it did in those days. Why should it cost 70 times more to buy a
baseball
to a sporting event?
I was in a Mets Saturday playing with a bunch of people I worked with from 1985 through 1996, and the only year they didn't raise the prices was after 1994 because of the strike. It was $7.50 when I started. It was something like $14-15 when we gave it up.
Yeah, now
I remember going with my dad to the Polo Grounds, and the price for a grandstand ticket was $1.25.
Absolutely,
that was
and it was Ladies' Day too.
Yeah, that's right.
There were.
Sometimes my grandmother would get to go, and it would be half price, or maybe ladies free. If I'm not on Ladies' Day.
I went to 25 World Series games between 1969 and 1978. I never paid more than $15 for a ticket.
Yeah.
Not today.
Not today.
It used to be that you could, if you were in town, you happened to be in L.A. or San Francisco or Cleveland or Detroit or wherever, and if you happened to be in the area where the ballpark was, at the end of I think it was either the middle or the end of the seventh inning. Now, almost any park in the country,
Forbes
you could
Field,
walk in.
They used to do that when I was going to Pitt. Forbes Field, they used to open the gates up.
Yeah, they'd open the gates up. You'd walk in, and I once saw an extra inning game at the L.A. Coliseum, a 15-inning game between the Giants and Dodgers. I walked in after the seventh inning, and
I used to pay
great game. Jim Davenport put one out in the cheap seat of the left field.
Left field bleachers in Forbes Field, and if we got ambitious, we paid $3 and go in the grandstand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so kids really. I mean, kids now, and the kids are spoiled in a way. The kids that do get to go get the great seats right down behind the dugout and all that. And
David, you mentioned the expression "running home from school to watch a game," and I think Alan, you brought up the '56 season. You were in junior high school. I was 10 years old. I ran home to watch the last couple of innings with the same mom who got angry at me later. We sat there and watched Don Lawson pitch that perfect game and Yoki run into his arms. And my mother told me a great story that day, and I might be repeating this, but in 1939, her family, my grandparents, lived up in Mount Kisco, and they had a little sporting goods store, a little general store that they sold everything. And one of their clients was a Yankee executive, and laid down 2 tickets for my grandfather who couldn't go. My mother went with a girlfriend. It was the day that Lou Gehrig was the luckiest man in the world, and announced that to everybody.
Wow!
And so my mother had these 2 Yankee memories. She wasn't much of a baseball fan or sports fan. I think those years the kids were the fans, and the parents were doing stuff of importance.
I got into it from the baseball cards because my parents couldn't care less. My mother, as I got older, my mother developed somewhat of an interest because I was a Yankee fan. Her favorite player was Hank Bauer. And I remember
I loved Hank Bauer.
I did too.
We would sit in those right field grandstands at first the Polo Grounds and then Yankee Stadium, right over Hank Bauer, and so many years, many games watching that. What was
it like? Get into this with David?
Let me finish with one question.
Hal,
because this is for Hal, who is a Giant fan. Everybody I talk to, there seems to be so many old Brooklyn Dodger fans who are out there that still bemoan, they debate without it, and I'm one of them who joins in that debate of, was it O'Malley, was it Robert Moses, was it this, that, and the other thing? Do you find it that there are few of us Giant fans left compared to the amount of Dodger fans that seem to have been direct? I mean, I was crushed when I was a kid, and I'm sure you were young too when they left.
Well, they left in '57. I was already in college. So I had other things on my plate, in '57. I was concerned with a lot of other stuff. So, it hurt. Don't kid yourself. It hurt because I was dyed-in-the-wool Giants fan. As far as Dodger fans, there seems to have been more of an attachment by Dodger fans with the Dodger team. And I think we talked about this the other day because the players lived in the neighborhood. You could go into the supermarket and you'd run into Carl Furillo. You could go into the movies and you'd see Duke Snider. They all lived in the neighborhood. And right. So I think Dodger fans were more invested in their team than this Giant fan. I mean, I love the Giants, don't get me wrong. And as I said before, besides the day that my son was born, October 3rd, 1951, is a magical day in my life. I'll never forget that moment that Bobby Thompson hit the home run.
Wow.
My father and I were dancing around in the kitchen. It was just a great moment. But, you know, as I said, I was in college when they left, and I said, okay, let's move on, you know. I wasn't happy, but it is what it is, you know.
I was a big Yankee fan, and I didn't want to see the Dodgers move because I wanted the Yankees to beat them all the time. I didn't want to see them move.
Yeah.
Right.
The Giants were going to wind up in Minneapolis anyway because, you know, I still feel that, you know, that those last couple of years there in New York, the Giants were bad. Then all of a sudden in '58, they go out to San Francisco. And all of a sudden, Cepeda and Alou and Davenport, all these guys come up from the farm system.
Terrific rookie crop.
Into a contending team.
Yes. And to say nothing of guys like Alou and Kirkland and Wagner.
Yeah, Jimmy Davenport.
Jimmy you mentioned him. He was terrific. What an underrated
good rookie year.
Was.
Yeah.
They brought up Covey and they already had Cepeda.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, talk about an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you think about it, when Bill White was a New York Giant,
yes, he
was supposed to be this terrific first baseman. He goes into the service. They and basically loses his position. They
got
him
Sam
off
Jones
to St. Louis.
They got Sam Jones.
Yeah. Sam Jones, he was not worth Bill White, but I think we've talked about this.
A couple of years he was.
Yeah, he was. He gave him some very good years.
He was the backbone.
Might have won 20 1 year, if I'm.
120 in 1959. He was like a
right.
Yeah.
Right. That
another former Indian that got away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes. That But you know what? I'll tell you. I just thought about it. The Indians giveth and they taketh away. They got Woody Held from the Yankees.
I got him from the A's.
They got him. He came in the Maris deal. Yeah, but he came along with Vic Power and they traded Maris.
The Indians gave up Maris, outfield,
Preston Ward, I think, was in that deal too.
Preston Ward and the pitcher named Dick Tominick.
Yeah, Tominick. Yeah, it was.
And they asked Lane about that trade, and he says he knew he was sending Maris on a one-stop, from Cleveland, a one-stop, one-stop over to the Yankees.
Right. Which brings my memory back to Mr. Arnold, who supplied the Yankees as a farm club. Hey guys, this was terrific. We celebrated opening day doing what we you three and me like to do best in the world, and just talk a little ball. How bad is that?
It's always the best.
Always a pleasure.
Beautiful. I'm glad you're enjoying it because I certainly am. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko. Beautiful night. Hal Bock, Alan Blumkin, and, of course, the esteemed David Nemec. Appreciate it, guys. We'll talk soon again.
Thank you, Ralph.
Okay, all right. Bye, everybody.
Night.
Keep on keeping on. It's back. Baseball 2017. The High Holy Day, opening day. See ya.